Hello. Hello, can you hear me? Yeah, you can. I can hear myself. Yeah, only the strongest survived. Okay. Hello, ViteConf. Thank you for coming on one of the latest talks. There are a lot of people. I did not expect so much people. It's been a long day full of wonderful presentations. My name is Vladimir. I'm a team member of VoidZero, Vite, and Vitest. Here. And without further ado, let's begin with the outline. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the features, some of the most notable features that we introduced this year to Vitest 3. Then we'll look into some of the new features not yet released but available in beta, like changes to configuration, mocking, browser mode. We'll only touch on browser mode because there's next talk will go more deeply. We'll go more deeply into that. And we will touch a little bit on the VS Code extension with a short demo if we have time. So let's begin. Big numbers. Big number go up. In last year's talk, I was very excited talking about Vitest achieving, I think, 5.5 million a week, downloads a week. Right now, the number is more than half. Well, it's not more than half. It was more than half a week ago, but it dropped down. More than 16.5 million, which is almost triple what it was before on the last ViteConf. I wanted to say thank you to all the contributors who made this possible, and everyone who creates issues with good reproductions. Please attach your reproduction. And next slide. This is a graph of a little-known project called Vitest Browser. As you can see here, the usage skyrocketed from around 200,000 to 106 million in just 1 year. We'll see why in just a moment. But first, let's talk about what we did this year for Vitest. One of the main goals of Vitest 3 was to standardize the public API. We started by rewriting the very convoluted on-task update API. I don't know if anyone used the reporter API before that. You might have struggled with it. Shout out to Ari, he's somewhere here, I cannot see him, for working on this. Previously, Vitest exposed like an internal on-task update hook that you could listen to and figure out what happened based on the data that you received. So you didn't actually know if the test finished or test failed or what happened. You just got the data and you're like, okay, previously it was this, so probably now it's this. Internally, we had like a giant example of this function. After a big rewrite, this became this. So now there are events, actual events. Event cycle is now standardized. And the arguments they receive are also a new public API that was actually introduced before the reporter API, like in preparation for it. If you want to read the full specification, you can go to advanced section of the Vitest docs. And by the way, in Vitest 4, we completely removed the old hooks. So if you still used some of the old hooks, like on finished, on task update, hope you didn't, you need to rewrite them to new equivalents, like on test run end, for example. We introduced a new concept to the browser mode called instances. These are mini projects that share the same Vite dev server, but run with different configurations. This approach improves the time it takes to run tests significantly because we can just reuse the same Vite server. Previously, if you used, well, even right now, if you use projects with different configurations for browsers, then we will spawn a new Vite server that will have its own cache. And not very smart decision to run tests like this because they cannot reuse the code that was already processed by another browser, for example. In Vitest 4, we changed a little bit the API. So the provider, so the string is no longer a valid option like it was before. It would specify provider Playwright. Now you specify provider Playwright, but as a function. You import it from npm package of your choice. By default, there are still 3 Playwright, WebDrive.io, preview. This entirely removes the need to add references. If you used this before, you might have remembered this like / reference types, Vitest browser, providers, blah, blah, blah. Now it's all automatically, and the browser names are also now picked up automatically, so there is no errors, accidental errors that you might make. But speaking of browser mode, Vitest 3.2, so all of those were in 3.0. But Vitest 3.2 introduced a new custom locators API, allowing you to define your own methods on the page and on any locator objects. If you've ever written a custom testing library query, you might be familiar with the query helpers object from there, somewhere there, from utils. This is similar in principle. If the default set of function is not enough for your use case, you can define your own locators and get auto-retrying for free. These methods return like a locator string, which maps to a Playwright locator. But even if you don't use Playwright, we still map it into like a magically resolve the CSS selector there. And if you use WebDriver IO, we pass just CSS selector. If you use preview, then it doesn't even go into the server. If you don't return a string, this method is just the regular method. You can access like this dot something there if it's a locator, like on line 13. Yes, you can see. On the little things, in Vitest 4, there will be also a small change to this. Instead of using the long Vitest browser context, we are standardizing it into Vitest browser. The types are picked up only if you have the Vitest browser Playwright or Vitest browser WebDriver IO or preview. So they will not pollute your regular test if you don't care about browser mode at all. Yeah, note that these APIs are only available in browser mode. They will not be available in JSDOM or HappyDOM tests. We have no plans for this yet. By default, if you don't abort, if you abort a test with a stop button in your IDE or by doing Control-Z or Command-Z, Vitest waits until the test function finishes running. This can introduce some friction if you are doing any sort of heavy computations, like testing LLMs or executing a child process, for example. For these kinds of situations, Vitest now provides you with an abort signal instance that you can use to abort long-running processes. It can greatly help speed up closing Vitest in like situations where something is stuck. Usually, if you do it right now, you do double Control. Can you hear me? Yeah. And then these processes will stay in memory, or not in memory, but will still be running, for example, if you have a child process, because by default, Vitest node does not remove them in these situations, in segfolds, right, in kill signals. So by default, Vitest aborts the signal when you pass a bail flag and another test fails. When you press Control-C, Command-C in the terminal, or in your IDE, this is an example of VS Code extension, when you press the stop button. Yeah, so it's very, very useful in those situations. If you used VS Code extension, you press stop button, and nothing happened, this is why. Annotations API. Another cool thing we added this year is the annotations API. You could call this annotate function. It's actually asynchronous, but you can also call it synchronously, because Vitest will await when the test ends all the annotations calls. You can annotate a test line with some information like title or file or description or a link. There is no example. You can also pass down a body, which is like a buffer. So in your test, you can save them and look at them in like HTML reporter or in your UI. And speaking of this, for example, the UI and the HTML reporter show it similarly to how GitHub does it. It inlines the block on the same line with like a small preview. All built-in reporters support annotations API, not just UI and HTML, including the default reporter. But by default, we don't show all the annotations to avoid clutter in your terminal. So only if the test fails, you will see the annotations by default. If you always want to use them, you can use the verbose reporter or any other, well, I think TAP, JUnit, all of those. Or you can write your own reporter with this. It's now easier than ever, as you have seen from the new reporter API. It's mostly useful for marking tests like fixes issue number or debugging in a generated file or, for example, on your CI. I haven't seen this used much yet, but maybe this will help it spread the word. Vitest 4. Vitest 4 comes with a number of breaking changes and new features, not just breaking changes. Most of the breaking, like when we released Vitest 3, it was a little bit of in a rush. We had some backlogs for breaking changes, so there was a pile that piled up to Vitest 4. So all of those that were supposed to go to Vitest 3 are now in Vitest 4. But most of them, like configuration, just enable, disable, or moved into another object. You can find the migration guide that's already available if you follow the link. It will be available on vitest.dev when Vitest 4 is released, which is this month, but the date is in flux. First of all, the most important change to me personally is that spying was rewritten. We no longer use the tiny spy package, or because it's based on nanospy API, and Vitest uses a different API, and every time we made a change to standardize the behavior, we had to go through all those layers of abstraction. Now it's much easier to maintain. And this allows us to also improve the auto-mocking experience if you use v.mock without providing a factory. Like, next slide will be about this. You can now use classes as implementations. I don't know why it wasn't supported before. Pretty easy to support. The intent with this change is clear. The old experience of supporting classes was quite verbose. As you can see on line 9 and 10, this was the recommended approach. You have a function, you assign a prototype method, just like you did 10 years ago when we didn't have classes. Now you can just, use classes. Pass down the class to mock implementation, or if you just do VFN, you can also just pass down class implementation, even though it says FN. The next change is also related to classes. Auto-mocked, so this will be hard to understand. Auto-mocked instance methods. Instance.1 method, instance.2 method, if you can see them on line 10 and 11. They now properly isolate between each other, but they share state, or they inherit a state from the prototype. What this means is that you can safely call mock implementation on the prototype method, as you can see on line 16, and expect all instances to inherit it. Previously, it would break sometimes it would work, sometimes it would break, sometimes it was both. We can see on the line 21 that, as you can see on line 21, we can assert that the method was called 4 times on lines 10, 11, 18, and 19. This means that if you don't have access to the instance, like this is the big change, that if you don't have access to the instance, to the 5 and 6, it's in some function, you don't know where it is, you can still assert, you can still assert that it was called correctly. Next slide. Vite-node is gone. Rest in peace. Just joking. Vite-node is now community supported. The new environment API that we talked a lot about today, unexpectedly to me. Since Vite 6, we can now use environment API, and it made it possible for Vitest to drop Vite-node package from its source. It now goes back to Anthony's collective, Anfu collective. This should have 0 effect on your tests, because it was always an implementation detail, but if some of your code relied on private APIs, then it might stop working. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then you will not encounter any issues. Vitest 4 comes with built-in support for visual regression testing. I'm not going too deep into it because Jess will talk about it. The goal of this feature is to provide a flexible API to compare screenshots that other tools can also build upon. We will be releasing this feature with a big, giant guide on how to set it up in CI, because we don't believe you should use it locally or on your own risk, in a way that reduces flakiness. So the guide will explain our decision process and how you should definitely use it. We don't always release guides on features that we release, so this was very important. A big shout out to Raul for implementing this feature, and he's also leading the development. So this feature is supported and will be supported, and we are accepting any feedback. Next, Playwright traces. Amazing feature coming in Vitest 4 is support for Playwright traces. You can just pass the browser trace on flag, and every test will generate its own trace file that you can preview in the official Playwright trace viewer. If you use Playwright, you know what I'm talking about. If you did not use it, then you probably don't. So this is a nice feature that Playwright provides with a timeline. There's no demo, unfortunately. But when you go through like every event, you can see the state of the page here. Maybe I can. Oh no, you can't see it. But it says hello there. Okay. The best use case for this is in your CI to see what went wrong with your test fails in the browser mode. Right now, it's a bit of a pain. In the future, we're planning to also upload the artifacts if you're using the GitHub Actions reporter. It would be like a link for easier access. Right now, you need to manually pass it down between the Vitest browser mode and Playwright viewer, trace viewer. Staying on the topic of browser mode, you can now debug your browser tests in VS Code. You can use debug tests button in VS Code to debug your tests in the browser, but only Chromium is supported at the moment. I don't think we can even support others because it uses CDP. This is made possible by the inspect option. So if you don't want to use VS Code, or if you use other IDE, or if you just use the DevTools protocol, DevTools directly, if you know this about inspect URL, you can just pass down the inspect flag and connect to it and preview how DevTools look in the browser. If it's headless, or if it's not headless, you can just view it. Why do you need the flag? So a small demo. Wait, so it started on my one. It did not start there. Okay. A bit of a dumb demo, but as you can see, this all runs in the browser without any configuration. I did not show you the config here, but just trust me, it just says browser enabled. We'll probably have a bit more time by the end. I will show you more of the debugging process, but it's now supported. Previously, it was not supported at all. Oh, hello. Okay. Performance improvements. As Evan mentioned, the next quarter for Vitest team is, we are working specifically only on performance improvements. We have already started investigating the bottlenecks and found some opportunities to improve the startup time for every test, and it adds up if you have a lot of tests. This is a post I made. When I say simple test files, I just mean like, okay, there is a regular test file, it has a test. It's just a simple test without any rendering, without anything, just math, calc, 1+1. Previously, we were loading some setup functionality that we actually did not need, so it's mostly a bug fix. This is already available in beta 4, but there is a performance regression, so you will not see any improvement at the moment. Yeah, maybe in the future. The last thing from the plans that I wanted to mention is the documentation overhaul. We are streamlining the navigation, combining separate browser advanced regular guides, config, and API docs into their own respective sections, instead of having separate navigation for different modes. If you used it now, you can see there's the advanced mode is hidden somewhere else. There's browser mode, it's in your face, and everything else is tucked in somewhere. Now it will all be standardized. We want to give more space to individual config options, like here the reporters, and functions like test, describe, v, and all its methods. To have better descriptions and examples. Right now, I think reporters just says a line, we support this. Read the guide. One nice addition is that ESLint rules and VS Code configuration will also be in the documentation. This overhaul will take some time and won't be available with Vitest 4, but we will release it like gradually. Pretty hot here. All the old links should still have redirects, so the old guides will still work, community guides. Okay, we have quite a lot of time to look into the okay. Ta-dam. And we go here. Ta-dam. Or maybe we should change how it is. Okay, let's go here. So there is this component, or there's a test that has a render. By the way, it's now asynchronous. Did not mention that, but it's important to support suspense API, stuff like that. If you used Vitest browser React before, you will have to update. Zoom. That's good idea. That's a good idea. But, that's perfect. So there's a component, button, very, very simple component. I don't use React, so I assume it's a simple component. So we can have a breakpoint. We have 2 breakpoints, but there's actually 3 breakpoints. 3 breakpoints. And so maybe I can show you the config. Maybe I shouldn't, because I actually lied a little bit. So it needs to support both Vitest 3 and Vitest 4. But this is what it is. So headless true, enable true, provider, actually Playwright provider. It's already, so it collected it here, the VS Code, and we can do 1 button here. What do we see? Aha, it worked. Thank God it worked. So here we can't see the value because it's not evaluated yet. But we did hit this function. So we go next. Now we can see clicked is false. Set clicked. Why is it false? Because by default I think it's false, right? Initial state, not clicked. Then we click the button, and what do we get? We get click true. Correct? Correct. Ta-da! What a magical experience. Oh yeah, it's all here, right? I also don't use this very often. That's pretty cool. And we can continue going and going and going and going and going and going and going, and then it stopped. Yeah, pretty cool. Nothing needed to configure. Everything was out of the box. I think that is it. Thank you all for coming, listening to me fumble.